Welcome back, everyone. Now that we have seen how we can create methods that return values, also known as value methods, also we have seen how to tackle difficult, complex-looking challenges by analyzing them, creating a English pseudocode, and then coding for that. Let's look into one more thing, one more new concept called method overloading. Now, I would like to explain method overloading by looking into our math class and its methods. So let's go to our Eclipse, right-click on our section name, create a new class. We're going to call it overloading demo. Okay, let's create our main method. And within this main method, let's look at couple things. First is when I call math class and when I want to invoke it as max method, I get something like this. There are 4 methods here of the same name. Simply, overloading is the concept of having the same method do different things. Method name is the same. The only difference between these 4 separate methods, these are 4 individual methods, individually developed. The only difference between them is, as you see, are the parameters. First method accepts 2 double values. Second method accepts 2 float values. Third accepts int, and fourth accepts long values. Also, their return values change as well. You see, method that accepts 2 doubles returns double, floats return float, int return int, and longs return long. Can we recreate this? Yes, we can. Now, let's call our class called value method demo. Value method demo dot. We have method called largest, int num1, int num2. Correct? Let's, instead of having one largest, why don't we overload this method similar to max method and create multiple options. So let's leave this main method here, go back to our value method demo, right? So within here, we have our demo return method. We're gonna minimize that so as to not distract us. Main method, we're gonna minimize that so as to not distract us. And I'm sure you added your documentation comments. This is the method that we are going to work on. This is a method that's gonna accepts 2 int numbers, returns 1 int. It's called largest, and we said we're gonna overload it in such a way so as this accepts multiple types of numbers, of primitives. So simply copy. I'm here, paste. Now, when you do copy paste, of course, the IDE is going to complain. However, the IDE is not going to complain that you're using the same name. If you hover over, it will say that duplicate method, one quick fix available, rename it. However, if you hover over to the left-hand side, all done, this error here is going to say duplicate method in type value method demo. Now, if I change my int, one of my int parameters into double, it will stop complaining, right? On the method level, of course, we will see that it's going to complain on the inside the code because basically num1 we changed its type to double, and here we're trying to assign num1's value into a largest. This is not going to work. You cannot assign double to an int. So let's just delete this. We're going to see actually how to write our code easy. And we're just going to add, so instead of returning largest, let's actually do this. Let's clean the body of this method and return 0. I'm sorry, we're going to return 0 because our return value is int. So one thing I wanted to demonstrate here, and I got off the track, was that this was our initial method declaration. The moment you change one of the variables, you're gonna be okay. IDE is going to tell you this is acceptable. However, any other change, even if you change the return value, even if you change public, static, any other change is not going to allow you to compile this code. The only change that will allow you to write the same method of a different name of the same name is by changing the parameters. You can say this method returns, this method accepts nothing. This is the same as having different parameters. In this case, we're having 0 parameters. So let's go back to where we are left off. We're gonna create an overloaded largest method. This is overloaded because they carry the same name, but this method is going to accept doubles and return double. And we're gonna say return, return. Do you remember our ternaries? So let's use ternary here. Return num1 greater than num2, is it? If yes, then return num1. If no, then return num2. So this is how a simple ternary operator will help our lives easy. Instead of writing this, we just wrote this, just one line. Return is number 1 greater than number 2. If yes, return number 1. If not, return number 2. Let's create another overloaded version of this method. In this case, instead of doubles, we're gonna accept 2 float parameters, num1 float num2. Okay, now instead of using ternary, let's actually cheat our program here and use math.max method that accepts float values and returns float values. However, obviously we'll need to change our return to, we'll get to that, num1, num2, and our return value has to be float. You see, instead of writing the whole line of codes, the whole line of statements, if-else branching, we can either create a simple ternary or we can call another method. And do we have another option here? What other math options did we have? Math.max options. We have double, float, int, and long. So we solved for all but the long. So let's create one more long option, and I'm going to use the ternary here. And instead of double, we're going to say return a long value. Instead of accepting doubles, we're going to accept 2 long parameters, and that's it. Method stops complaining. Save it. Go back to your overloading demo. Call your class name and say that within this class, I want to invoke largest. Now we have 4 overloaded largest methods, very similar to math.max, math classes max method. So this is simple demonstration of method overloading. A few things to remember. You have to change your methods except parameters. There can be no parameter, there can be different number of parameters. Actually, let's go ahead and demonstrate that. For example, you can actually create a method, public static double largest, and instead of having 2 parameters, you can have 3 parameters, and this is a completely different method, but this is an overloaded method. Right now it is complaining because it asks us to return something. So let's copy this code. Actually, instead of doing that, let me demonstrate one more way of playing around with your methods. You have this largest method here. This accepts 2 double numbers and returns the largest value anyways, right? Why don't we just call our largest method, pass in number 1 and number 2. So what this largest method is going to do, this is going to come from here and invoke this comparison, number 1 and number 2. And now this is going to return whichever is higher amongst those 2. And now your question is, how do I check for number 3? We forgot about number 3. If you want to do that, which we should, then create some space and let us do method nesting. So I'm calling largest method one more time, and the first part of my largest method, the first value within my outer largest method is going to be the highest of number 1 and number 2, the largest of number 1 and number 2. And the second part, second value is going to be number 3. So what this is going to do, we have seen this before. This is called method nesting. So instead of passing in a value, I am calling in another method that returns a value and assigns it here. Then I'm checking this assigned value with number 3. Whichever is higher is going to be returned. Okay. So thank you very much for your time. I hope all these are clear. Please read our content materials, exercise them, practice them, make mistakes, learn from your mistakes, understand the flow, create stack diagrams, especially for these method nestings if they are not 100% clear. Okay, and I wish you happy coding. I will see you in our next video.